Okay, so where was I here? Getting to some really interesting stuff here. Um, let's see. Okay, more confirmation. This was the no hitter by pitcher number 48, which I've talked about before. 1 year, 1 month, and 16 days, which hints at 1,116. That's also the word Bama. Both of these words are Bama. Simply one is capitalized and one isn't. One is a place name and the other isn't. They're both, and God uses both of these numbers. Okay. Furthermore, it was against the Tampa Bay baseball team, which is symbolism for lightning. And the big story in that game, too, was the hitter that batted for the first time ever left-handed and hit a 2-run home run, which hinted at the second presidency for the left-handed president. Okay. Now, one last thing. This this made, well, I don't know how to put it into words. So I won't. The day of the rescue. So this is all about the rescue. And furthermore, it was the boss. The boss, or it's not the boss, they just referred to him as boss. So boss, Ernest Shackleton, he made it to South Georgia Island with 2 other crewmates. And what was also symbolic of the times and a half is that there were 6 that left Elephant Island for Georgia Island, and then so the 6 landed there, and then 3 stayed on the beach there, and 3 crossed over the island. It's just part of this illustration of the times and a half time. But there were 22 men left on Elephant Island, and Shackleton wasn't able to return to them for about, I think it was a year. He made 3 prior attempts that failed. I think the reason why they failed is that he wasn't able to get to the shore because of the nature of the sea or something. Or I don't know the details. I think I read briefly, but maybe I didn't. Regardless, it took a while, and it required perseverance and on the part of these guys that were waiting patiently. It was a waiting symbolism, as in waiting for the rescue rapture, is what this is. This is huge. When that occurred to me, and therefore I knew that this had to in some way connect to the rapture date, I was just very, very happy, to put it mildly. And how it connects is also amazing beyond words. So this rescue, first of all, it was on the date August 30th. That hints at 3 eighths, which is the value of Jesus, the numeric value of Jesus. It was 22 men, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist, from which will require a rescue. Okay? And the number that symbolizes the Antichrist and his rule in Bible prophecy, 1,260, well, it's exactly 1,260 months to this August 30th date here in 2021. Now we finally know the big significance of this sign, because it wasn't, there's some interesting things about that sign. The plane that took off that had the giant serial number on it, 1109, which hints at 110 and 9, the numbers God pairs together, and it was 20 years after 9/11 and all of that, right? But you had a feeling that this was more important than just that. I kind of had a feeling there had to be more to it. Because it wasn't just like, okay, that's the end of Afghanistan, right? It's symbolic collapse of Afghanistan 20 years after the collapse of 9/11. I mean, that could have been all there was, but it just seemed like there should have been more. And it is really, one of the more significant events in recent American history, right? That's another reason why this has to be more than simply a confirmation for 9/11. It has to be revealing something, in other words, something new. I mean, the plane revealing the serial number is kind of new. I mean, it's a confirmation of something, right? But I think it seems like that sign has to provide us with some more profound information that we couldn't have otherwise gotten from somewhere else. That's my point. And it does, because it was an evacuation and it was a rescue of the vulnerable people in Afghanistan, including Christians. It was a rescue and it was an emergency. I mean, it collapsed immediately. It collapsed rapidly, overnight, literally, almost, right? And so that's symbolism for a panic and an emergency. It didn't have to collapse like that. But why did God do this? This symbolism is for the rescue rapture. And that's why it is exactly 1,000 days before the rapture. The rescue rapture on Pentecost on May 26th, 2024. 1,000 days hints at 144,000, the number in Revelation that symbolizes those that will be raptured. Because it is 1,440,000 minutes. That's the equivalent of 1,000 days. That's amazing. That's so amazing. I mean, we already knew, beyond a doubt, that this is the day of the rapture. But this is just so amazing. All right, so the next diagram, this is the new stuff today. That was all discovered yesterday. So today, I woke up, like I said, with a mission to figure out what God would have been communicating with Trump and a connection from Ernest Shackleton's death from a heart attack and his burial on South Georgia Island. Because it was already known that this date here, so going back here, we have the 5th of March and the, let's see if it's in this diagram. Okay, it's not in this diagram. Why isn't it in that diagram? Huh, okay. It's here though. There's a 4-day gap. The Endurance ship was discovered on March 5th, 2022, and then the news of the discovery was announced on the 9th. This just happened to be the date that Trump had an emergency in his airplane, his Trump plane, flying home from New Orleans to Florida, but the news of it didn't break until the 9th, which paralleled the 2 dates of the Endurance ship. And at the time, I was like floored. I was like, whoa, this is huge, right? But nothing ever really came of it. There were some things that came of it that were kind of forced in a way, because that's how, the big picture of science works. It's like a puzzle. You try to fit pieces together. Not all of them fit that you're trying to fit. But on the whole, we've been very successful, right? So there's been some minor things that didn't quite fit necessarily, or what weren't as profound as originally thought. And it may even just be shooting my mouth here, because maybe if I look back at the information, I'll agree, that is relevant, right? But what my point is that, again, just like the Endurance sign, just like that eclipse in 2021, the full meaning of it wasn't understood. Just like the evacuation of Afghanistan, it's all coming together at the end here, in other words. Anyway, there's nothing really that significant that comes from these signs, Endurance and the news of Endurance and Trump's plane and the news of Trump's plane on the 5th and 9th of March in 2022. Nothing really came of that. And I tried, there were some minor things that it connected to. I think it connected with 9 weeks to a prophetic date in June or something like that. And then it just kind of faded. I put it on the shelf. Like many signs, it just ended up on the shelf, right? For another day when the picture becomes clearer, such as right now. And so it just occurred to me about 2 hours ago, actually, because this was all discovered earlier today in the morning. A couple of hours ago, I realized that, I had an epiphany that New Orleans is the symbolic city of the South. And it is the major city. If it weren't for Miami, and prior to Miami and its ascendancy, New Orleans was the gateway to Latin America, for example. It was the economic city as well for the South with trade to the Americas. But now Miami is, right? In recent decades, right? But anyway, New Orleans and Houston, okay, it's South as well, but it's Texas. It's like the Midwest. It's like the Southwest or something, right? New Orleans is the symbolic southern city. Okay? And what are we talking about? We're talking about the South Pole. We're talking about Antarctica. We're talking about the South Sea. And that's why Trump's plane incident occurred as he was flying over the ocean, America's southern ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, on its southern border, as he was flying home from New Orleans to Florida. I mean, this Trump thing of his plane that day and the emergency landing, it could have happened anywhere. But why did it happen between New Orleans and Florida? It's exactly what I'm saying. It is for the purpose of pointing to the Endurance sign in the South Antarctic Ocean. It's amazing. That's why so I forget exactly what happened, but his plane had to make an emergency return back to New Orleans and Trump had to fly home on a different plane. And so it was an emergency, right? And anyway, that's why I was flying over the South Ocean, like I just said. Okay, so that's an amazing confirmation that this Trump plane incident sign is part of this Endurance Shackleton ship sign. Okay, it's all about, now, how is this connecting to Trump's death from a heart attack? How is Ernest Shackleton going to confirm that Trump will die from a heart attack? Well, what is amazing? This is so amazing. This is why I think I needed to share this with you now, instead of like a few weeks or a month from now when I get around to making the Trump videos. This is because Shackleton died on his return trip back to Antarctica, just like Trump will die as he's making his return trip to the White House with his re-election campaign. For that matter, this is one of the reasons for talking it out, because I just had another epiphany. That's why he will die on the election campaign. It will be like Shackleton dying on his return trip to Antarctica. Shackleton died on his return trip on another expedition to Antarctica, and he died on South Georgia Island. His crew, his friends, they started to bring him back home. They contacted his wife from Buenos Aires, and she told them, you should bury him on South Georgia Island. And it's so appropriate because, as I think someone said, maybe his friend and crewmate, it says it's how he would have wanted it. Because South Georgia Island is Ernest Shackleton. That's where he made it to with his journey across the sea, and then traversed over the island, over the uncharted mountain range of the island to the other side of the island in the winter well, I guess it's always winter there. Let me see. Was it winter? I guess it would have been the spring that time, but he was in the mountains, so it was all snow. And I'm sure maybe the whole island was snow anyway. But so, okay, so that's one thing. But it occurred to me, now wait a second. Is it possible? Is it possible that God is saying that Trump will die from a heart attack in South Georgia? When I first thought of that, I didn't think about the symbolism of the election campaign, but we can add that to it now while he's on the election campaign. It just initially occurred to me that, wait a second, what if God is actually communicating the location of where he will die? I mean, he clearly communicated unexpectedly. It wasn't even thinking about it when it was first learned through his signs that Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis. He's communicated the location of where Kamala Harris will die. Is it possible that God is communicating the location of where Trump will die in South Georgia? Okay? And he is. Trump is going to die in South Georgia, specifically Savannah, Georgia. So with that epiphany, it then occurred to me, I did a search, and I think I typed in Trump, so I looked at the map. That's what I did. I looked at the map and I looked at what are the cities in South Georgia. And there's really only two, Macon and Savannah. The other cities are in the north of Georgia, which is designed by God, because this wouldn't have been learned probably otherwise. If there had been like 10 cities to look up, no, God made it very simple for us. These two cities are both involved in the confirmation that this will happen and that it will be in Savannah, Georgia, as you will see. So I typed that in, Trump. I typed in Trump, Savannah, Georgia. I wanted to know if there had ever been a prophetic sign or a visit of Trump to Savannah, Georgia. And what came up is something mind-boggling. What came up is this woman here, Savannah Guthrie. You know, that's an epiphany I just had now. I didn't think of it until now, but the G, in fact, could be hinting at Georgia. In fact, it is, because we know it is, because that's what's happening here, right? And so it can't be a coincidence that her last name begins with a G. So Trump had an interview with this woman here right before the election. Let's see, it was 6 + 6 + 6 days before the election. There's another epiphany. I better write that down. 1 second. Okay, so this probably was maybe the last big interview or something like that. It was a town hall with the one woman doing the interviewing. And, well, there's so many details. I don't know if I should get into it all. But the thing is, God is using this as a prophetic sign to expose Trump derangement syndrome, for one thing, which I am very pleased to do. He said that she was totally crazy, quote unquote. Savannah, it was like her face, the anger, well, I can't read my writing because it's so small. I had to cram it in. I don't know. Some other adjective. Okay, and he repeated how she had disappeared. Like the issue as he was speaking on the campaign trail the next day, and she just disappeared. We don't know where she is right now. What did he and he went on to say something like she's probably not feeling too good about herself right now or something like that, right? But the point is that he talked about her location the next day, because the interview actually was on the 15th, but the sign is on the 16th. Okay. And he talked about her on the campaign trail, and he made an issue about where she is, because I guess I assumed that she would have been following Trump on the campaign trail or something. And we don't know where she is today. But he said that. And where did he say that? Coincidentally, he started the day in Florida, and the last campaign speech of the day was in Macon, Georgia. He was in Georgia, and he was talking about Savannah. And specifically, that's the location where he talks about where she is. She's disappeared, quote unquote. She went totally crazy. The quotes that I just said, that's what he said in Macon, Georgia. Those are the two cities. Savannah and Macon, Georgia are the two South Georgia cities. Okay, now Savannah Guthrie, her name in gematria, 1,290. That's relevant, obviously, from Daniel. The two cities are connected with the I-16, which hints at 4 times 4 and the 44th president. And let me see. Should I just jump ahead? I shouldn't probably give you the punchline just yet, because no, I won't. I won't. You'll have to. It'll be rewarding to get all this other information out of the way before I give you the big crescendo. Okay, the big crescendo at the end here. Okay, it has to do with Obama. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so I read into her background. This is amazing. Now, she is famous for also having done another interview with Trump in 2011, long before Trump was running for president. And the interview ended up being famous about or for her grilling him on his role in the birther conspiracy. And what have I been saying in recent videos? God is pointing to that. And it's for very good reason. Trump's rise as God's trumpet was for trumpeting how Barack Obama wasn't born. Well, he wasn't born in America, okay? Where was he born? He was born in Kenya, and that's why Savannah. This is the big symbolic reason why Trump will die in Savannah. Just like how Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis, it will point to something very important, which is the eclipses that produce a mark over the country. And the trumpet, God's trumpet, began trumpeting how Obama was born in Kenya. That's how he became big. His rise in status. And that's why he will die in Savannah, Georgia, 14 days before Obama will become the president. Sorry, this is a typo. It should say the 21st. Okay. The 7th plus 14 is 21st. This is more confirmation of the 21st, like I was just saying, which is again exactly 1,158 weeks after 9/11, which hints at Daniel, right? Her name is 1,290, which is Daniel. Okay. And what happened after 9/11, as I mentioned in a previous email and video, 14 cows were donated by the Maasai tribe in Kenya that live on the savannah. And that's why Trump will die 14 days in Savannah before Obama, who was born in the savannah or in Kenya, where the 14 cows were donated from after 9/11. So I think it's clear now, if you had any doubts about whether God was using Trump to point to 14, because that crane sign was 141 weeks and 1 day. If you doubted that, I don't blame you if you did, because it was new. But that's for sure real, because it is important. Trump is associated with his calling out of his birth certificate, which is all about the 14 cows. And that's why he will die in Savannah 14 days before the president's rise again. So that's the big crescendo. It was unavoidable. I couldn't hold it off any longer. Now, this date here is 1,117 days, which is Bama to Trump's death on the date 11/7. That's when I first realized, wait a second, because as I said, after I thought about South Georgia, I typed in Trump and Savannah, and this came up. And that's when I realized when this date was this many days to this date here, these two dates hint at each other, obviously, as you can see. That's when I realized we were definitely on to something here. Yes. Now, then it occurred to me, probably this was the next one, I forget. But as we know, Georgia is important in these elections that were, you know what, when Warnock, you know what, the election, and that was this date here, the date of the election. We already knew that this was 66 days before Warlock died, the guy that, the actor that played the Warlock, which hints at Warnock. But this is, and we already knew this as well, it's exactly 7 times 7 times 7 days, which is 49 weeks to the death of the 49th vice president on this date here, which hints at this date because it's also hinting at 11 and 7. And it's 3 times 7 days, and Trump is Joshua, 3 sets of 7. Okay, so that connects us to this Georgia sign. Clearly. Easily. All right. Now, the thing is, another thing about Savannah, she's Australian. A big thing about her, because she's quite famous. I didn't know this because I don't really follow the mainstream news or television, but she's this big person on NBC News, and like super big. But the thing is about her is that she was born in Australia, and so she's perfect symbolism for how Obama wasn't born in the US either. So that's perfect as well. Now, more about her. Okay, she had CVD disease 3 times. When was the first time that she had the CVD disease? It was on January 10th. That hints at 110, Joshua, and trumpets, and Trump. This was 666 days before the death of Trump. That is mind-boggling. That's more confirmation that Trump will die in Savannah. The 3 other dates also connect this third of the 3, 252 days, which hints at 2,520 days. Bible prophecy, which is 36 weeks, which hints at 666. This also hints at 666. We have the 2 CVD disease dates for Savannah, hinting at 666. Trump will die from a heart attack, which will have been contributed by the CVD thing. All right, so that's just amazing. Now let's see, what's this here? This is the day of the expedition Endurance 22, the day that it launched. It had 27 men. Just like the Ernest Shackleton ship, it was Ernest Shackleton plus his 27 crew. Coincidentally, this scientific expedition ship had 27 men on it. It's 8 times 80 days. I think that's relevant, because Trump is about 9/11. That hints at 88, which is a 9/11 number, which God pairs with 9. To point to 9/11, but also this day that Shackleton was buried on South Georgia Island is 99 years and 11 months exactly, which is 1,199 months exact, which happens to be 9,999% of a year, which is 9s. 27 men gives us 9s, which pairs with the 8 times 80 days. Arguably, I believe we have a connection from Shackleton's burial on South Georgia Island to the date it is predicted that Trump will die in South Georgia. All right, now the strongest earthquake in Georgia history. This is mind-boggling. Oh, by the way, the Trump plane signs, I didn't finish this. 587 because of Flight 87, just after 9/11, that crashed into Queens, where Trump was born and is from, on the 11th day of the 12th month. Sorry, the date 11/12, which hints at the 11th hour going into the 12th hour. Anyway, that was the day that the lotto numbers in New Jersey both were 587 that day. The second one was 785. The first one was 587 on the same day that Flight 587 crashed. And Trump called in to Channel 9 News on 9/11. And anyway, so, all right. 5 times 8 times 7 equals 280, and the 280th word is the word for riddle, enigma, which is a puzzle, which is why God leaves it to us to search a matter out. Proverbs 25:2. And that's why this connection is solid and profound, because it was Flight 587 that's associated with Trump because of Queens, to the date of this plane crash here, which connects to the death of Trump. This is amazing. And that's how the Trump plane signs that parallel the Endurance ship signs connect to his death. And the Endurance signs involve South Georgia. All right. But it's also exactly 7 years after Harrison Ford's crash here too, by the way. So that's more confirmation to the connection to Kamala Harris's crash. Okay. One last amazing thing here. The earthquakes. I'm going to start with the one that I discovered after the first one. Because I figured, well, if Trump is going to die in Savannah, there's probably an earthquake in Georgia. God would have done that, right? Earthquake signs. There must be, the Holy Spirit probably, nudged me, but I just knew that there was probably a prophetic earthquake. Now, earthquakes are quite rare in Georgia. There's only been 38 over 3.5 in magnitude since 1903 or something like that. And yeah, so I forget the other statistic, but the big ones are rare, like very rare. The strongest ever earthquake ever detected in Georgia is 4.5, as in the 45th president. And when did it happen? Exactly 108 years before Trump's plane incident and the discovery of the Endurance ship, which is about Georgia Island. That's amazing. This date here is March 5th, which is the same date of the burial. It's exactly 4 plus 4 years. Because this is 100 years. All right? But this is 108 years, and that's relevant because, as we know, God used that eclipse to point to the Sea of Weddell. And 188 is associated with eclipses. And, we had that 108 years with the Cubs signs, right? This is amazing. And as we have just seen, that this, in other words, this Georgia earthquake connects to the day that Trump will die in Georgia. But it was first discovered because of this. So this was the earthquake I was looking for. This occurred on the date June 18th, 2022, which hints at 6 and 6 plus 6 plus 6. This is very Antichrist. Okay. Now, it occurred at 4:05 a.m., specifically 4:05.23 seconds, but 4:05 a.m. hints at 45, as in the 45th president dying in Georgia. It was first reported as a 4.5, but it was changed, it was lowered to a 3.9. So it was originally a 4.5, which hints at the 45th president, But in order to connect it, God lowered it to 3.9 to confirm this connection, which is exactly 13 times 39 days. It's also 13 times 13 times 13, and 3 divided by 13 equals 0.230, which confirms with the 23 seconds. But, 13 is Antichrist. 39 is God is used for 3 divided by 13. This is a solid connection because the earthquake is 3.9. So there you have it. It's also 1,156 weeks, which is also only occurring in Daniel, because Obama is the word Daniel, the connection to 9/11, with this number of weeks. But this number of weeks, 2 weeks earlier, 14 days, gets us this word, which is the word for seek, ask God. But so I read the instances of this word in Daniel chapter 2, which is the only chapter this word occurs in the Bible. And the sequence of it is amazing because first they're seeking Daniel, then Daniel seeks from the king. Then the king seeks from Daniel, and the people seek from Daniel. And then Daniel seeks from God, the answer to the riddle of the dream. It's all symbolism for seeking God. Trump's death will be a symbolic beginning of the end times. And God will be saying, seek God through this connection to 9/11.